This will be the final log of Lookout Tower 8. After all the things I've witnessed out here, I feel like my life will never be the same after this. The days following my arrival at Tower 9 were rough. My injuries were taking a toll on my psyche. I was immobile for nearly 2 days straight after I had regained consciousness. Thankfully, Katie was around to help me out. She took care of all the menial tasks as well as helping me up and down the tower to, well, relieve myself. It was embarrassing being so helpless, but she never made me feel like a burden. We continued taking shifts, watching over one another. We had hoped that the ranger who had brought us out here would have done another resupply run of the towers, but as the days went on, it seemed more and more unlikely. The first handful of nights that followed were uneventful. There had been zero indication that whatever that creature was had come back. I wanted to believe that the blast it took drove it away to die alone in the woods, but I knew it wouldn't be that easy. After 3 full days of watching and waiting, something finally happened. I was taking up my nightly watch as Katie was heading to bed. I stared out at the starry night sky above from my seated position opposite the door. To pass the time, I have been reading one of the books Katie had brought along with her, a cheesy romance novel, but at least it was something to keep my mind occupied. As I was reading by candlelight, my eyes shut for a split second, and when I opened them, darkness filled my vision. The candle had gone out, and only a faint ribbon of smoke twisted in the moonlight before me. I sat up and looked around. A light breeze caressed my face and I turned. My heart began to thunder in my chest as I saw the tower door was open. My eyes snapped over to the small cot where Katie had been sleeping. It was empty. I scrambled to my feet, and in doing so, a piercing sensation shot up from my leg, spreading throughout my body. It was like my insides had been set on fire. I steadied myself for a moment, and after a few deep breaths, the pain slowly faded. I grabbed my flashlight and shotgun and hobbled out onto the tower's ledge. I called out for Katie as loud as I could. A few birds in the nearby trees scattered from the branches. I limped down the steps, feeling needles in my leg with each impact. It took me ages to reach the bottom of the tower. When I stepped onto the dirt, I paused and looked around. I called out once more for Katie as my fears were mounting in my mind. The echo of my voice faded, and for the first time I felt completely alone. I was just about to resign myself to defeat and climb back up the steps, when I heard something in the distance. A faint scream hit my ears from an unknown location in the woods. I thought about climbing back up the tower to grab my backpack, but I didn't want to risk losing Katie because I took my time to climb back up. I limped quickly in the direction of the scream. Every step was agonizing. I had to take regular breaks with every handful of steps or so. I continuously called out, and just when I thought I had lost track of her, I'd hear a new scream. Sweat had started to soak through my clothing, making my body feel 10 times heavier. Thoughts were racing through my mind, wondering what I'd do if I found her. After an hour of walking, I entered a small clearing in the woods, and I called out again. The scream that returned was extremely close now. I pushed my way through the thick brush, and I saw them. Katie was being dragged away by the creature. Where they were heading to, I didn't know, but that didn't matter. All that mattered was saving her. When she spotted me emerge from the trees, she called my name in elation. Upon hearing my name and seeing what was happening, I pressed the butt of the shotgun into my shoulder, took aim, and fired. The creature screeched and dropped Katie into the dirt. It turned to face me. I could feel a fiery hatred in its eyes. I felt like I had just whacked a bear with a twig. It began scuttling along the ground towards me like a beetle. Everything happened so fast, I was unable to raise my weapon for a second shot. It swatted the gun from my hand and gripped me by the neck. It raised me off the ground and stared at me with those vacant white eyes. The creature was no longer grinning. Its face was twisted into a scowl. I could feel my throat beginning to close as its grip tightened. I looked over at Katie, who was lying incapacitated on the ground. I could feel my life nearing its end. My eyes began to shut, and I was silently thinking my last thoughts I'd ever have. Then, suddenly, the creature released its grip and I hit the ground hard. My legs striking the dirt caused me to unleash an ear-shattering scream. When the pain began to fade, I looked up and saw the creature clearly cowering away from me. It was the first time that I could see it so clearly, its grotesque humanoid form. And then I looked down at my hands and realized I could see myself clearly as well. It took me far too long to realize there was now a light filling the area around us. I turned, and standing not too far away from me was that thing I had spotted on the first night, the one that carried the lantern. It held its lantern out in front of its body, and what was once a dull red glow was now a bright orange, like it had somehow captured a piece of the sun in its hands. The other creature recoiled and shrieked in agony before its skin began to slowly flake away. It seemed as if the light from the lantern was burning this creature alive. Then, with a single brilliant flash of light, the area dimmed, and the creature that had attacked both Katie and I was no longer there. I sat up and looked at the thing carrying the lantern. It looked like a man with a curved spine and long, stringy arms. It had long hair that hung past its shoulders. For the first time, I could see its face clearly. It was the face of a simple old man, warm and caring, like a grandfather. He said no words but gave me a faint smile and a nod. He raised a finger and pointed to Katie. Understanding, I quickly hobbled over to her. After a moment of prodding, she regained consciousness. When she spotted the man, she pulled back in fear and confusion, but I told her not to worry. I asked her if she could walk, and she nodded. The man carrying the lantern made a follow gesture with his hand and led a path through the woods back to Tower 9. When we emerged from the trees, he stopped and turned to face us once again. Despite my dry and hoarse throat, I thanked him. He returned a simple nod of acknowledgement and began to head back into the woods. Before he could leave, however, I said sorry, and he stopped briefly. Sorry. About Peter, I said. The man turned and gave me a mournful glance before continuing on into the woods, the faint red light disappearing shortly after. We slowly climbed back up into the tower. Not a moment after walking inside, we both collapsed against the wall. We sat together in silence, too tired and sore to move. Katie's voice trembled as she broke the silence a single time. "Thank you," she whispered. I couldn't find my voice to respond. I just held her hand tightly. Katie passed out a few moments later, and I held my notebook in my hands. I was about to start writing, but before I could move my pen, my eyelids shut, and I fell asleep. I awoke a few hours later. The sunlight was piercing the windows, shining directly into my face. Through my blurred vision, I saw a figure standing in the doorway of the tower. In a panic, I scrambled over and scooped up Katie's shotgun that had been left behind. As I turned to aim it, a voice called out to me. A deep, gruff voice telling me to take it easy. In that moment, my vision cleared and I saw the visage of the ranger who had brought us out here. Upon recognizing him, I dropped the gun and felt tears cloud my vision. I nudged Katie, who stirred from her sleep and saw him. She only managed to give a weak smile. The man walked up, and his previously stoic demeanor was flooded with looks of concern and worry. He said he stopped by Tower 7 and 8, and when he found them both empty, he was beginning to fear the worst. He asked us what happened, and we couldn't seem to find the words to answer him. He helped me and Katie to our feet, and told us that he was going to get us out of here. As we walked down from the tower to his truck, I paused one last time to look at the forest, and then back up to the tower. After getting in the truck, Katie and I both sat in the back seat. As we drove, the ranger asked us again what had happened. I thought carefully, considering lying to the man because he might think we had gone insane out here. With a heavy sigh, I explained everything to him, in as much detail as I could remember. He didn't say a single word the entire time. He just drove and listened. Once I finished, he paused for a few moments, then began to speak. He said he has been a ranger in these parts for many years. He said he used to hear stories about this place. He said that 80 years ago, there lived a man and his son in a shack in the woods. They were living off the land. One day, something attacked them in the night. The father watched helplessly as the monster tore his son to pieces. When it turned to the man, he reached for anything to shield himself from the monster's advance. He grabbed a nearby lantern and held it out in front of him. The monster recoiled in fear and ran off into the woods. People say that the man, stricken with grief over the loss of his son, has been wandering the forest with a lantern, keeping that monster at bay ever since. The ranger said it was just a ghost story that the locals in town like to tell. He said that in all his years working out here, he never saw any evidence to validate the rumors. Well, not until now. I'm currently sitting in a hospital bed writing this out. Luckily, Katie wasn't nearly as injured as I was. After taking some time to think about what the ranger said, I think I'm starting to understand what happened out there. This is just my personal theory, so I don't know for sure. But I think that the man carrying the lantern was keeping an eye on the towers and searching for that monster. When he ventured to Tower 7 and Peter shot at him, he either ran away or vanished. With the lantern carrier gone, that allowed the monster to run free throughout the forest, with us as its primary target. I'm not sure what caused the man with the lantern to come back and help us, but I'm thankful he did. We probably wouldn't have survived if it wasn't for him. I don't know what that monster was or where it came from, or why that lantern stopped it. Maybe it thought it was some holy relic, or it probably just hated fire. Regardless, I just hope to God no one else ever has to see it for themselves. The ranger stopped by to let me know that he reported Peter as missing to the authorities, and that they'll be conducting searches for him soon. I hope they find him. I hope he survived somehow. Though in the back of my mind, I know that's unlikely. If any of you come across these logs and find yourselves heading into the woods, maybe for work or recreation, I hope you understand the dangers involved. Be cautious, be vigilant, and be safe. As for me, I'm never setting a single foot inside of a forest ever again. My name is Luke, and this is the final entry for Lookout Tower 8.